and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk About It. In today's podcast, we're going to be talking to Dan Sr. and Dan Jr. We're also going to talk a little bit about the bombing in Nashville. We're going to talk a little bit about the stimulus packet, and before we leave, we'll make sure that you guys get, your New Year's safety brief, because we know all you military folk have to have one. Otherwise, you're going to go and do some awesome things like marry the stripper right outside post. The last thing before we get started is, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. That's the greatest and easiest way for you to support us. And remember, we are just here to talk and chat and kind of have a good time. I'm Lewis.
I'm Ray.
I'm Nick.
I'm Dan Sr.
That mic's not working.
I'm Dan Jr.
Remember, you got to talk into the top, Dan.
Okay, how's this?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
I don't think it's still working.
Dan, you are wow, somebody's getting good stuff outside.
Yeah.
The next thing on the must-get list is like some foam padding for your building so that, we can have nice acoustics inside the building.
All right.
You should get on that.
All right.
It'd be cheaper just to buy a whole new
Oh,
building.
next Christmas.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll write it in the budget.
Yeah. I have to make my own budget.
Yeah.
I can tell you it's not going to be in it.
Yeah.
But Dan, you were a Coast Guard, a Coastie.
That is correct.
That mic's not
and
working.
It is. I can hear.
yeah, I can hear.
No.
Yeah, you can you not hear it? Maybe it's because you're not up on your.
Mom, my thing's loud. I can hear everything else from loud and clear. I just
I
can't
can
hear.
hear everyone. You can't hear me at all, though. Huh?
Okay, now it sounds better.
Yeah.
All right, I'll get real close.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
There you
I
go.
can even hear myself.
That's awesome. So you were actually part of the Coast Guard Honor Guard,
Yes.
correct? And you served one of the, in my opinion, greatest, conservative presidents we've had in modern history. One of, not the one of, Ronald Reagan. So can you tell us a little bit about your time in service, and maybe a story or two, because I'm very intrigued as to, being part of an honor guard at the White House. So.
Sure. In 1984, I went into the Coast Guard, and I went through boot camp, 8 weeks, graduated from there, and then they gave me an option of where I wanted to go, and because I was 6 foot tall, they said, you can join the Honor Guard if you want. So my brother had been in 4 years before. He was in the Honor Guard. He said you should go for it if you could. So I went into the Honor Guard, went through another 6 weeks of training there, and started doing ceremonies in Washington, D.C., some parades, some funerals, and different things like that. And they do a background check. So they go around, and the White House literally sends out Secret Service agents and checks out your background. And they go to your high school, they go to your neighbors, they knock on their doors, they ask different things about you. One guy actually didn't get his White House security clearance because he had shot a cat with a BB gun back in the day. And they said, nope, you can't get your White House. So he ended up getting shipped out of the Honor Guard. So I got my White House security clearance. And it was right around the time of the presidential inauguration. So I got to do Ronald Reagan's second inauguration. And the ceremony normally is in January, just like this one's coming up here with President Biden, President-elect Biden. And the temperature was so cold, it was 7 degrees out. And with the wind chill, it was negative 25. They ended up canceling the parade. Never before had that been done. And so they ended up doing some inside ceremonies. Even his swearing in was in the inside. And then because all the people that showed up for the parades and everything, and the marching bands and all that, they ended up doing a ceremony after the 3 days for everybody. And one of the neat things for me was all these celebrities are walking through, and we had this cordon with the Honor Guard. We're all standing in rows, one military, then the next military, all 5 militaries. service entities. So I'm up in this one area, and as they're walking by, you have to look straight ahead. You can't look to the left. You can't look to the right. But like I can see all four of you right now with my peripheral vision, even though I'm looking straight ahead. And so, they're walking by, and you can see who they were. And right in front of me, Nancy and Ronald Reagan stopped.
Oh wow,
So I
that's
got to right there and just stare at them, and they had to stop there for whatever it was, like a couple of minutes. So it was pretty neat to be that close to the president. So that was one neat story. Another was they would have these ceremonies in D.C., and you could, basically call on what they would call is the color guard. And like you've seen, like sports events, they bring the colors out and all the different flags and everything. So, if you were on duty, you ended up going, and there would always be two guys. One would be there, and then the other one would be a backup in case there was some issue. So I got to do a couple of celebrities, and I don't know if you remember the Brady Bunch at all.
yeah.
So I did one where Florence Henderson was there, and Pearl Bailey, and Florence Henderson at the end of the ceremony came over and gave me a kiss on my cheek. So now I heard some things about her later on, with some of the cast members. So I don't know if she was trying to scoop me or whatever, but
I was just about to ask, were you married at the time?
Opportunity missed.
Yeah, opportunity missed, I guess. I don't know. And then another one was from that television show Alice, Vic Tayback. So I got to get his autograph, and he wrote on my glove, he said, "Stow it, Dan," which was pretty cool. And then probably the toughest thing about being in the honor guard was doing the funerals.
Yeah, I bet.
That's the most time I see like on the TV where they're all set up, all the different branches and stuff set up around there. I was like, that's what. Like, as soon as you said that, I started visualizing that. I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah. And I was part of the 21 gun salute. So we worked real hard, all seven of us. So you only shot 3 shots, and we tried to make our 7 shots all at one time sound like one shot. And then we had to do that 3 times. So it was, ready, aim, fire, boom, and then ready, aim, fire, boom, ready, aim, fire, boom. You do all 3 all at one time, kind of like that. And so you really strive to make it impactful. And then watching, because we're off in the distance, and watching the whole ceremony. And, obviously somebody died in the military, and, that was probably the hardest part of doing it. We actually had a kid, one of my roommates in the honor guard, he was on a motorcycle, went to go meet up some other kids camping, and he slid off the road, and he actually died. And we had to do his funeral. And
that must have sucked.
That was big time.
Yeah.
Just the nicest kid. Jay Hudson was his name. And just the nicest kid, probably the nicest of all of us in the honor guard, and yet to have to do his funeral was just gut-wrenching for sure.
So how long were you on the honor guard? How long is that detail?
It depends. You basically, once you get there, you have to go through to get your White House security clearance, like I said, and then after that, you apply for a school. So once you become, you get out of the boot camp as an E2, and then you have to make E3. So once you make E3, then you apply for your schooling. And once your schooling billet comes up, then they transfer you. So it's usually about 2 years.
Oh wow, that's still pretty cool. So I have a question. The Army has a detail that I can't remember the
No.
I know that,
Okay.
but I was trying to think of the unit.
President's 100 or?
No. The President's 100 is totally different. But the guys who actually guard the Tomb of the Unknown.
The old guard.
No. I know that it's the old guard. I was trying to think of the actual unit, because it's an infantry unit.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, they actually, in order to get and be selected, they have to give up alcohol for the rest of their lives. They cannot be in trouble. They actually can lose the badge. Is that something that the Coast Guard does as well, or is it just a kind of another duty assignment for you guys?
When I went in, it was just another duty assignment. They didn't have it that strict. No, everybody. Back then I was going out to nightclubs and all that kind of stuff. One neat thing about that is I actually got to go to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and actually go in where they change up and all that kind of stuff, talk to some of the guards and things like that. It was real neat.
Right.
We did many of those ceremonies, which was pretty cool too.
I was going to look it up, but I think Ray's looking it up. So I know you went from there, and then you became a rescue swimmer. And okay, so I got to know. They made that movie out in Alaska, right? For the Coast Guard rescue swimmers. And do you guys like literally do stuff like jumping straight into the ocean, rough seas from helicopters and stuff?
Absolutely. So I went from there to a storekeeper school. So I drove across country, went to California, became basically like a supply person, and then was on a ship out of Boston called the Spencer, WMEC 905 Spencer. And it was a 298 foot long ship. And from there they and they were just starting the rescue swimmers then. So what you've seen in The Guardian, that didn't exist yet. So
awesome.
We didn't actually have a school. And so what they did is they asked for 2 volunteers, and I was one. And we went down to the Naval Air Station, Jacksonville, Florida, and we're trained by the Navy SEALs.
Oh, awesome.
So we had a 30-day crash course by the Navy SEALs, and it was a hell month to go through all of that. And then we got basically our fins, they called them, you didn't call them flippers. We got our fins and all of that stuff. And then I was back on my ship. And yeah, I jumped out of helicopters and was hoisted up. And the only good thing but bad thing is I never actually had to rescue anyone. We did do some search and rescues. We didn't find some of the people. But I did a lot of drills where they threw a dummy overboard. It wasn't another Coast Guardsman. It was actually a dummy. But and I had to jump in the water, rescue them, and hoist them up, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, the school that you're talking about there, the reason they even, from my belief anyway, I guess I'll say, they started that school was during the Naval Air Station schoolings. They had this thing kind of like it was called Froggies for Dollies. And you're in this pool, and you're treading water, and you're all facing inside a circle. So you see the rest of your Coast Guardsmen sitting there, and as you're treading water, the Navy SEALs are jumping from behind you and pulling you down. And then you go underwater, and you have to break their hold. And then you have to get them in a hold and bring them up. Well, one guy, 2 classes after mine, did that several times, but they didn't realize the next person had jumped on him, the next person had jumped on him. He actually drowned.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know for a fact, but they definitely shortly thereafter they started the 9-month Coast Guard training there in Alaska. So, but yeah, it was a tough class, and I was glad I did it. Never been in better shape back then.
So you guys are I know both of y'all are marathoners, right? I think.
Correct. Yes, we both are.
That's which I think is awesome. I live vicariously through you most of the time. I'm like, not running it today. Was that where you kind of started your marathoning career, or was that something that you were doing prior to joining the Coast Guard?
Well, I was doing 5Ks, 10Ks, 3 miles, 5-mile races, and so forth. And then I was in the Honor Guard in D.C. My brother had come down. He was running. He actually ran. He has had 3 Guinness Book records.
Oh, wow.
He ran a mile backwards in 6:06.
Mile backwards?
A mile backwards. He ran a marathon backwards in 4 hours and I think it was 21 minutes.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yep.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Yep. And then he ran 87.6 miles backwards in 24 hours nonstop.
Okay, so I kind of get it where you get it from. I kind of see where you get it from now. But, wow.
So he came down and he said, Dan, I'm qualifying for the Boston Marathon. Why don't you run a marathon with me? So I ran the Marine Corps Marathon with him. So I had never run a marathon. The most I had ever run was about 15 miles. So I'm running with him during the race, and we're doing sub 6 minutes. And we're at about 10 miles. And I'm like, I can't keep that up. So I'm like, you go qualify, I'll finish. 15 miles, I ended up with a leg cramp, never finished. And the neat thing about it, here it is 33 years later. This guy next to me says, Dad, let's go finish what you couldn't finish. So we went back in 2018. We went to D.C. and we ran the Marine Corps Marathon. We finished together.
That's good
That's
stuff.
awesome.
So that was pretty cool. That's when I passed my shoes over to him, basically.
Hey, so I had a lieutenant, he used to do marathons. Is there a purse or something like that you win? Like you can actually win money off of that?
Oh, absolutely. You can, in marathons, a lot of them do have money. Matter of fact, Houston does. A kind of a neat story. So my wife was supposed to run the Houston half marathon. And they had prizes for the full and they had prizes for the half. And so she couldn't because she had a cold or something, I think. So we had the BIM, and you're not really supposed to do this, but we ended up saying, hey, does somebody want to run it just for fun? So my nephew, who basically got into the Air Force Academy because of his running, he had the top 1,500 time in the nation that year. So he got he made it into the Air Force Academy, and so we asked him if he wanted to run. He came in third for the ladies, but he was DQ'd because obviously he wasn't a lady.
Yeah.
So but yeah, there's persons for winning.
Nowadays, it doesn't really matter, right? Like you can identify as. Sorry. Not Kathy Gifford. Who am I thinking of? Oh my God, she just got into office as a Democrat. And I can't think of her name. The veteran. Anyway, she actually proposed a bill to stop the whole, do whatever. Like men have to compete in men's and women have to compete in
She was
women's.
the one that ran for presidency, right?
Yeah. So anyway, so that's awesome. Any cool stories as a, getting to be down in Pensacola with all those awesome Navy SEALs? I was gonna, be rude, and then I realized that I'm not getting into a fight because I would lose very quickly.
No, really, probably the harshest, you talk about hazing and things like that, when I went into the honor guard. Now, normally you're in the honor guard, like you had asked, about 2 years, and then you go on. But my brother was in 4 years before me. He was in the honor guard, and after a little bit of time while you're in there, you can become an instructor if you want to. So basically a drill sergeant in the honor guard. So he did that. So he trained this one guy. This guy stayed his full 4 years in the honor guard, which is rare. And so I pull up, and I get out, and I'm standing there, and he's like, hey, your name is Davis. Is your brother happen to be Don Davis? And I said, yes, it is. He's like, he was my trainer. So what he did is he kicked the guy out of his room. He took me into this one room. He put masking tape around my whole face. He took my hat, threw it in the toilet, put a stick across me so I'm looking like a mannequin or
Like a scarecrow.
Scarecrow. And then you get this belt buckle, and I still have the belt buckle today, that you're supposed to polish up. And, that's what you wear. He took it up against a brick wall. And he just made my 6 weeks in the honor guard training hell. And then after I graduated, he says, you know what? Actually, your brother was a pretty cool guy. I'm like, what?
Ass. Thanks so much, but I'm gonna give you hell.
Yep. So it was tough for sure.
Man, that's awesome. So you went back into the fleet, right?
Sure.
I don't think is it called the fleet? So
In a matter of speaking, sure.
okay, one of my frat brothers is a Coastie, and I would always give him a lot of grief about the fact that he joined, a sister branch, not a real branch, but anyway, he would always, have certain things that he would say to shut me up, and one of the things that he always would say is, "How often did you carry a sidearm while on in the States?" And I didn't carry a sidearm unless we were going to a range, or you can't. Nick was actually an MP, so he carried a sidearm pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
But did you guys do any busts?
As a matter of fact, we did. So on the ship, we did search and rescue, which we had some of those. We had one point in time where we lost our engines, and we were down in Cape Hatteras trying to rescue a sailboat. So the sailboat lost its rudder, and then we lose our engines, and we literally were in waves that were twice the size of our ship, and they were coming up and over and everything. So we did search and rescue. We managed to get our engines rerunning, and we were able to save the sailboat. We also did fishery patrols. One time we pulled over a boat that was shrimp, fishing for shrimp or whatever, and or they were supposed to be fishing for something in this territory. They literally have the ocean sectioned off in areas saying, you can fish for this here, but then in 2 months you can fish for something else there. And so we would have to zone those things out, and actually we got a big fish dinner because they said, okay, well, we appreciate, we gave them a warning, and they give us a bunch of fish. And then we did the Haitian remigration. We brought Haitians back. One time we had pulled over so many Haitian boats that we had 3 times the number of Haitians on our flight deck than our crew. And I was actually one of the guys that did the guard. So here I am with a shotgun. And there's like 300 Haitians on this flight deck. I'm like, if they tried to overcome me, I'm going nowhere. But we needed, they were required to be brought back to Haiti, which was sad. I mean, that in itself is sad, bringing the people back. I had to go use the phone one time. And so I got off the ship and went to go use the phone. And down in the bottom of this hill, these kids are playing along and, having fun in the water. I get to the top of the hill. That was really the potty, basically. That's where they went to the bathroom. And that's how bad it was. No windows, it was sad, really sad. Basically, Papa Doc and Baby Doc, they basically took all the checks from the U.S. government and just put them in a drawer. Never spent the money and never helped out the people. We were sending aid and they weren't spending it. So then on the drugs, to get to what you were asking, we ended up pulling over this freighter that we searched and searched, and they were on this list that they very well could be carrying drugs. And eventually we managed, we drilled a hole in their mast, and we looked up there into their mast, 438 kilos of cocaine we ended up seizing. It was the biggest bust at the time, back in '89.
Wow.
So,
That's what I was wondering. There's so many hiding places on a ship, and it'll take, if you tour it apart, it'll take you months just to go through every nook and cranny.
3 days. We stayed with that boat for 3 days. We held them up for 3 days because we were convinced that there was something there, and we searched and searched and searched, and finally managed to find it. Yep.
Wow. And then at that point, you get to seize it, and
we bring it back. The boats, a lot of the time, while they sold that one, we wouldn't. Sometimes, depending on the boat, if you couldn't tow it, you would basically sink it. We'd have shooting practice, and we'd eventually sink the boat.
That's awesome. I'm sorry, I got a little excited on that.
I don't know. That's a lot of money you can take to those drug seizures, resales. How much one of those ships cost?
Yeah, some of them you can't, especially like the Haitian boats. Those things wouldn't even last. Trying to get pulled behind, and that they would have sank anyway.
Okay, those I can see. Just part of the reef. It's cheaper. Easier that way.
Yep.
Exactly.
Right. Yep.
So you got out, and then what have you been up to in the last?
So I got out in '89. Did 5 years. I had about 60 days worth of vacation, so I got out a little early. Started to get involved in the finance side of things. Became a controller, and then a controller at a couple of different companies. And then through a software migration, I got involved in the IT side. So for the last 15 years, I've been in IT. I'm a CIO now for a construction company, multinational construction company that's here in the U.S. and in Canada. Matter of fact, I reside in Tennessee right now.
Oh.
So we're about 15 miles from Nashville, where my wife and I live.
So we'll take that as a segment. What do you think about the bombing that just happened on Christmas Day? There's been a lot of talk about, homegrown terrorists, whether this guy was, trying to commit suicide. There's been a lot of speculation, and of course, with everything, there's always going to be speculation. But coming from that area, what are your what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know a ton about what's going on. Obviously, they're still investigating everything. The power or the internet was out for literally about 3 days. We have a lot of friends in our churches up there as well, and so they were without. We actually have an office even in Kentucky, so we're about 2.5 hours from Kentucky, and they were without internet. That's how far spread it was.
Wow.
That far out.
Yeah, that far out. And some of the just my own thought processes. Is it a test for something bigger? Because to see what it would do to a city like Nashville, it's pretty amazing. All of Nashville. Now, granted, it was just one carrier.
Correct.
So we came from Texas, so our connection was through a different pipeline than where a lot of people that were provisioned out of Nashville. So we didn't have our internet service out, whereas the legacy people or the new people did. So it was pretty interesting to see what's going on there, and I feel bad for definitely the environment that the people were facing. But yeah, I think there is, in IT I deal with a lot of cyber security and cyber threats and things like that. And that's kind of, even though this was a bomb, that's kind of what it was, because it impacted communications. And we were just watching something with Dan's son, and it was on the sun, and how, you know, some of these solar things can blast out communications.
Oh, yeah,
I
on
mean,
the solar
imagine if
flares.
communication is just killed throughout the United States. What would that do? You know, now an incident can happen in one place and nobody would have a clue. So something to think about.
Yeah, we also need to recognize there were 6 police officers who, whenever they received the bomb threat, there was a call beforehand, about 15 minutes beforehand, that there was going to be a bomb exploding in this area. And so
Wasn't it a shots fired? I thought it was shots fired, not a bomb.
there might have been shots fired. I've also heard stories that there was a bomb threat that was called in as well. Whatever it was, the 6 officers rushed to 2nd Street, rushed to the area, and started going around and knocking on doors and evacuating the buildings. They had no idea when the bomb was going to go off. They had no idea what type of impact that it would have, but they said, this is our duty. This is what we signed up for every single day. And they saved countless lives. I think that right now they're saying the only life that was lost because of the bomb was actually the bomber himself. That there's been no other remains, at least, that have been found, no other missing persons either.
Right.
And so it just shows how important police officers are in those front line, you know, people that protect us every single day. The, you know, ambulance workers, EMS, firefighters, police officers, dispatchers, all of those. It's an interconnected web that is ready to respond whenever disaster strikes.
Yeah, from what I heard, they went pretty quickly, because there was even like a countdown of some sort that I guess he sent out, you know, counting down to, you know, when the bomb was actually going to, you know, detonate.
So there's a actual video, like a store video, where there was audio coming out of the Winnebago saying, you should get out now, the bomb is going to be going off. Like, it was warning them. And kind of go back to something you said, you know, I hadn't even thought about the fact that it could be a test run, you know, for something bigger. I mean, you look at the Twin Towers, right? I mean, first it was the bomb underneath in the garage a few years prior to the planes hitting it. But we have lived in a, you know, you can count the number of times that we have seen domestic terrorists or terrorism in the United States in, you know, a hand, and probably have a few fingers left over, or about 10 times, right? Because we really, I mean, Pearl Harbor, and then nothing really happens until in the States was
Oklahoma was.
Oklahoma. Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
you know, and then the Twin Towers, and then Twin Towers again, and, you know, now we've had a couple of more, but it's just been for people who don't really understand, you know, like the Middle East. This is something that happens on a regular basis. We have been very well protected, and I'm going to get on a soapbox. They're looking at me funny already, because
Well, there's been a lot more terrorist things, as you said. Like you talk about, just count on a couple of hands. There's been a lot more terrorist attacks, and some stuff doesn't make big news as.
no, I understand that, but like explosions in that fashion, right? I mean, we have the bombing at for the Winter Olympics, you know.
Boston.
Right. It's gotten a lot more, and I guess that's what I'm trying to say is we had lived for so long in a very protected environment, and I think we're seeing them a lot more. The 90s and 2000s really have brought a lot more of this, you know, global terrorism into our shores, and to me it's really hard when I hear people saying we want to be like other countries, we want to open up things more, because in my mind there's a lot of things that I don't think people here are capable of really wrapping their head around. You know, you mentioned Haiti and how these kids are living in poverty. You know, we consider people poor here, who are still making, $20,000 a year and have a roof over their head. They're not living in squalor and, at a dump like they do in Haiti and in, Honduras and stuff. So
yeah, I was just going to say, in Honduras and Guatemala, we put them there, and they're living in cardboard boxes underneath overpasses.
Mhm.
That's their house. That's all they have. It's just
right.
the amount of poverty that's out there in the world. We're not even coming close to even helping with that. Never mind in the United States.
Correct. So, the other thing that I really struggle with is the lack of, and this is going to get bad. All right. So I honestly feel that if people get the 15 seconds of fame, people are going to do that more and more and more to be able to get it. And I feel that at some point, consequences need to happen. This gentleman, whether it's a bigger thing or it was just him, right? It's the fact that he's going to get some publicity that he went in his mind probably was thinking, hey, I'm going to go down this path. The lady who said she had lost her child up in the balloon or something, wasn't it in Nevada a couple of years ago, and it hadn't happened at all. So it's these type of things where there is absolutely no ramifications for their actions that I think lead to some of these things.
Yeah, and when you look at just the impact that it had in Nashville, even if it was a lone act, what is it showing other people? And I'm a member of, it's called InfraGuard, and it's hosted by the FBI, and it works with private business. You have to pass a background check and everything. And so I get notices all the time of cyber threats like crazy. I mean, they're a dime a dozen a day that they have to investigate that can bring down the infrastructure. And that's what they're going after, the control panels of plants and things of that nature, and the grid and all that. And every day they're trying to stop those things. Well, you can do all the cyber you want. A bomb outside a building isn't going to, you're not going to be able to stop something like that through a cyber type thing.
Correct.
So they're one way or another, and that's where, like, if they say take away the guns, they're just going to come at you with knives. And yeah, maybe you can't do a mass killing, but then what about a bomb? And look how many people can probably make a bomb privately. So, this is just, it's spiraling in a way. And I'm a Christian, and my wife and I have been pastors in the past, and we're just continuing to head towards the end times. I mean, that is an inevitable ending where we're heading to. Is this the beginning of that? Well,
Yeah.
You also have to look at it from the other side. So it's not just somebody that is looking for those 15 seconds of fame, but there's the demand for that. That you look on social media and you look at the ails of our current society, where we want to see that. That's why they have these compilations on YouTube of people just injuring themselves, and they have millions of views because people think it's funny. People continue to click, people continue to watch. And so it's not just punishing the crime, but it's also how do we take it a step further, and how do we raise up people, and how do we raise a generation to think a little bit differently, to view things differently, to not give in to the credence of the desire, the urge to watch these things that happen.
Right.
I have a daughter myself. She's 4 years old, and it seems as though if you want to be popular or you want to be famous, you have to, wear your makeup a certain way. You have to show a certain amount of skin if you want to get a boy. That if you want to get followers on social media, you have to bare your breasts a little bit. You have to, do these sexy dances. And it's because people watch that, so people feel the need to do that because they want to be watched. And so what I'm doing with my daughter now is I'm teaching. I'm like, you don't need that to be beautiful. You don't need that to be loved. You're special just the way that you are. And I'm ingraining that in her now, so that way when she reaches an age where there's the pressure to give into that, she's not necessarily giving into it. Now, she's not going to be perfect by any means, but I hope that she knows that she doesn't need that affirmation from other people in regards to her own life. So I think it's twofold. I think it's one, how do we address the people that perform the acts and that commit the crime in this instant, But how do we also address the demand for it? The demand that people will continue to watch these videos. You know, do we have to look at the way that video games are being utilized? And that's a very hot topic conversation in regards to violence with video games. Do you address it there? What about with movies? Is it desensitizing kids towards violence, and then they're watching violent videos, and then people know, okay, if I commit a violent act, I'm going to get attention because of it, not just through people talking about it, but also because people want to watch it at the same time.
Yeah, that's been like a big argument since the Columbine shooting about videos, music, and all that
Right.
stuff. When was that? What year was that?
Man,
That was back in the 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
early
Yeah.
Early
90s.
90s.
I was thinking about another big one where the guy went through and did like a live stream where he went around and started shooting people. Was it like that?
Yeah.
Like, man.
They've had a couple of the Facebook lives where they've killed people. To kind of go back to that, right? Grand Theft Auto. I don't know if you remember, when Grand Theft Auto first came out, right? Like, oh man, I needed to get it. I had to get it, and it grew old for me very quickly because I don't have the hand-eye coordination to play all these games. Yes, I am a nerd, but not in that fashion. But there's a lot of things that kids were doing because they saw it on that. Jackass. I don't know if you guys remember. MTV was huge on bringing Jackass and doing all that stuff, and it's gotten to a point now where kids, you're right, like kids are really doing these things to try to see how many likes, how much more of that publicity they can get.
Yeah, I'm reading this book by Tony Dungy. He's a ex-football player and then also coach, and he coached Tampa Bay and then Indianapolis and won the Super Bowl. It's called Uncommon, and he talks about a lot of this, especially having come up in the football side of things, that what people are after and the peer pressure and that minute of fame. He even talks about the football players. They feel like they have to do these things in order to be, Deion Sanders, and prime time and all of that. Because if they're not that outspoken, they won't be recognized, they won't be liked, and then they won't be kept on the team. And so, but, and again, coming from the Christian side of things, if we could go back to our roots, what this country was founded on,
For sure.
and who we were founded on, and then the dads get back in the homes, that will change a lot. Obviously, that's not the single answer, but that will change a lot. I definitely recommend that book for anyone that wants to read it. It's a great, great book. He's got a series out there, even Uncommon Marriage, Quiet Strength. There's several of them, but it's really good.
Awesome. We'll have the title and author on the description shortly after we finish this. But one of the other things that I kind of wanted to talk about, I know that you went into politics and have gone down this road of awesomeness. And it's really cool. For those of you who don't know, I met Dan January of 2019 at a chamber function. At the time, he was actually running for City Council of Manvel, Texas.
And I can remember we met, and I know maybe it was probably a room of about 300 people. About 300
Yeah.
people. I maybe knew 2 or 3 people there. And so I was able to get tickets, but because I wasn't with a table or I didn't know anybody, they kind of sat me at like the table for the outcasts. And so that's where
I was. It was a table at the Outcast.
It's where they, the individual ticket holders that don't really know each other, they kind of just put you together. But it was you and I were there. I think Kim was there.
Yes.
Kim Dugas, and then Jake
Starkey
and his wife
wife
were there. And so that's where we first met. We had a great conversation. I enjoyed it.
And you were one of the youngest, or the younger, city council members in our area. Of course, there's Joel, who will forever.
He's still a baby.
Yeah, like he's 21 now. Like he just turned 21. He's been on council for 3 years.
Yeah, like when he was 18 years old. He still holds the title, and he hates for people to know this, but he still holds the title for being the youngest elected official in the state of Texas.
Huh?
And
Oh, wow.
he's 21 years old for the city of Alvin. So it's it's really cool to see within Brazoria County
Right.
how we have a really unique synergy between people that are experienced, like our mayor for Manvel, Mayor Deborah Davison. She was on Bel Air City Council for 8 years. She's now been serving mayor for 3 years, but she has a established history in Texas politics. So on Manvel City Council, we have our mayor, Deborah Davison, and then we have myself, who I'm 27 years old. I'm a young guy, don't know much about life yet still, and we're able to work together, and it's really a cool mix that we're seeing start to happen in the county.
Talking to the mic.
Talk a little better like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Joel is also the youngest mayor pro temp in the state of Texas.
That's true.
At 21. But kind of want to talk a little bit about you and A, what took you into politics, starters, and B, can you tell us a little bit about some veteran-friendly legislation, especially in Manvel and maybe a little bit in the area or smaller towns. And then I have a couple of other questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say thank you guys for having us on today.
Absolutely.
Been watching some of them and went through and watched in preparation for this today. And I think it's awesome what you guys are doing. You're speaking not only to active military and to veterans, but you're speaking to the general population. And you're talking about issues and items that myself, was never in the military. I've never served in that sense, and it's talking about issues that I'm not aware of that veterans go through.
Right.
And as somebody that wants to help people, being aware of what veterans go through on a day-to-day basis, some of the issues that they face, shows me ways that I can help as well. So really appreciate what you guys are doing. Politics for me started, I would say we grew up in a very apolitical family. We never really sat around the table and talked about political philosophies or John Burke or John Locke or Edmund Burke and what's natural law, conservatism. We never had those conversations growing up. But whenever my wife and we moved back from Japan, we were missionaries in Japan for 8 months with my son, and that's where my daughter was born. And we moved back from Japan in 2016. And we didn't really know what direction our life would take. We really didn't know what we wanted to do because our identity was so caught up in being missionaries in Japan. So coming back, we were kind of lost, but we knew that we just wanted to help people. We wanted to help people, and we wanted to get plugged in with the community. So the 2016 elections were happening at that time. And I was of the age now where it's important to be aware of what's happening, what's taking place in society, and seeing how divisive it was. And seeing how it was not about discussing ideas. It wasn't about debating issues. It wasn't about seeing what's going to be the best direction forward for America, but it was more so, I'm going to beat the other person down to the point where nobody wants to vote for them because I've beat them down. And we were talking about trying to grab the headlines. It was more so about who is going to take up space in the airways rather than talking about what's best for the everyday average American. And seeing that happening and being aware of some other things that were taking place in my own personal life, I really came to the realization that it's not government that's bad, but it's the people that control government that unfortunately make it corrupt and distract from the original purpose of what government was intended to be. Government's of the people, by the people, for the people. And it was intended to protect our natural God-given rights. And unfortunately, it's been distorted and it's been manipulated for selfish ambition or self-serving purposes that it negatively impacts our lives. So one person can cast a vote, and that one singular vote, let's say for my dad, can have such a positive impact in his life or such a negative impact in his life. And this, of course, happens at the federal level,
Right.
but it even more so happens at the state, county, and the local city level. And to even take it a step further, it's your HOA, it's your school districts, it's your mud board, and really, kind of wrapping this piece up, seeing how much of an impact somebody in politics can have, I really decided with seeing the 2016 elections that we need good people in politics. We need people that are there to serve, that are there to help, and that aren't looking for what they can get out of it, but looking for what they can give. And so that's what really kind of inspired and drew me into wanting to get involved. I never necessarily thought I would run for political office, so to say. Just knew that I wanted to be engaged, and one thing led to another where now I'm sitting on Manvel City Council.
One of the things, and we'll sideline this one, but I honestly feel that there's a lot of people that go into politics with great intentions. It is the length of time that they stay in politics that ultimately creates the problems. Because the longer you stay in politics, the more susceptible you are to A, political influence from others, and B, you forget what it was like to be with the common folk, right? And just to share an example, right? And we were talking with one of our buddies the other day, and he made the comment that the city was going to put his parents' mailbox on the opposite side of a major road. There was a couple of other folks on that road, and he reached out to a local council member and, was like, hey, who can I talk to? The council member actually gave him somebody, and then all of a sudden the mailbox is now in front of their house, right? Which is great, because that is something that really, whoever was planning that needed to think about it, right? Especially in a major 4-lane road. But most people wouldn't have that, right? There's that influence that you have when you know people of influence, right? So I say that because, I honestly feel that, most people go into politics to serve. It is when they start, being there too long, and then they end up going, if I give you $100,000 and you give me $50,000 back through my foundation, we've both come out, and nobody's coming out of their pocket except like the taxpayer, right? Nick's like, no.
All right, where are we going with this?
So, sorry, it was my deviation, but so tell us a little bit about the politics inside of Manvel, specifically when it relates to veterans.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk about Manvel, but more so cities in general. There's two primary ways that cities such as Manvel help veterans. The most common way is through tax exemptions, specifically for your house and for your property.
Mm-hmm.
So it is fully dependent on what the county makes available through the state, and then also what your city utilizes as well. So for example, as a county, we have available to us in Brazoria County 2 different homestead exemptions that are available for disabled veterans. One is a 100%, you don't have any property value, you don't have to pay any taxes. Now, you don't get to pass it along if you die to your spouse or to your children. Then there's the kind of the incremental disabled veteran, where maybe you're considered 50% disabled. That's something that is also available through the county, and based off of what percentage the government considers you disabled, that is also what you get exempted on your homestead. So let's say it's 50%, your property is appraised at $200,000, you then technically would only pay taxes on $100,000. And that is also something that can be passed along to a family member or spouse, whoever is going to continue living in that property, as long as they're directly related to you whenever you pass away. So those are things that the city can utilize. So what I would highly recommend to anybody that's watching this or listening to this is to reach out to your locally elected officials, You can also reach out to the county tax assessor collector, which we have a new one that is stepping into that position, and ask them. Say, is this available within my city? And if it's not, petition your local government and ask them to utilize it. And then if it is, you can work with the county or you can work with our Veteran Services office at the county, and they can walk you through that process of how to have that exemption applied. And I'm going to be honest and real here. It's unfortunate, but it's tough sometimes to convince a city government to forego tax revenue. And so if these exemptions aren't available, it would be a uphill battle to make them available.
Right.
You would hope that as an elected official, you would never vote against a veteran or a need that a veteran has. But it's this back and forth that you have between, city staff, city council, representing the goods of the city, representing the best interests of the community. It's dependent on the nature and the culture of your city. So anything that reduces revenue, it's a difficult conversation to have at the city level, but that's also because it costs to do business.
Yeah, the pros and cons. Okay, somebody's got to make up the money that the person's not paying. I heard that back and forth. So the 50% thing, is that just an Alvin thing, or is that Brazoria County?
So this is something that is available through Brazoria County that then cities can make available to their citizens.
Okay, it's up to the city itself.
It's up to the city itself. So it's available through the state. The way that it works is the state enacts it into law, the county makes it available, and then cities can leverage that through the county to make it available to their citizens. So, for example, we have the City of Alvin and the City of Manvel. Now, this is just a hypothetical scenario. The City of Manvel could say that this 100% disabled veteran exemption, we are going to make it available to veterans in our city. But the City of Alvin, completely hypothetical, could say that we are not going to make this available. So it's up to each city, and it's processed through the county because the county processes all tax payments.
Okay.
So that's why it's available. But the second thing that cities can do and should do is also partner with local organizations that really provide a lot of the needs and services that veterans depend on. In Brazoria County, we have a tremendous amount of services available. I know you guys recently did a podcast episode with Warriors Refuge, yeah. That you guys did that live, and they're out of West Columbia, I believe. So they're a fantastic organization. I believe that local governments should be very focused and specific at what they're good at, but that they can partner with other entities and they can partner with other organizations to provide some of the essentials, to provide some of the benefits, to provide some of those value adds to the community through partnerships with these entities and with these organizations. So we have I spoke with her before this podcast just to get some information. Her name's Sonia Broadway. She's a Veteran Services Officer with the county. She is fantastic. And one of the great things for Brazoria County is when March hit and the coronavirus really started spreading throughout America, many Veteran Services offices throughout the entire country actually started to shut down, stopped processing requests for VA, for a variety of other things. Brazoria County is one of the few offices in the entire nation that found a way to quickly switch everything to be virtual, so that way we could still help out our veterans. And even the departments up in DC have reached out to Brazoria County to ask, how did you guys do this? How are you guys still continuing to submit these requests? But it's because we have people like Sonia who are just fantastic.
Yeah, I've heard her name around a lot.
Yep. So she is a fantastic resource that we have that entire offices, and she is just a wealth of information to figure out ways to really help out our veterans whenever they need it the most.
That's good information, I know.
There's something I was going to say. With the military, when you're in the military, actually you seem to be taken care of pretty well. You get the three squares, you got the room, you got clothing, you got these different allotments, and you even have other benefits like you don't have to register your vehicle. It's registered, it stays registered as long as you're in the military. But we seem to be forgotten once we get out. And that's where I like some of the hardware stores, I don't know if people know this, but you can apply for a VA card, even if you've only been in 4 years, and you get 10% off on all your purchases.
Right.
You know, you get the your loan. You can get a home loan and not have to put anything down, and the government guarantees it 100%. So as long as you qualify with an income. So there's things like that, but I think there needs to be a little bit more because we've sacrificed our lives and we were paid peanuts while we're in the military. So when we come out, you know, and so something I would propose is no sales tax on anything for military. 'Cause there's not that many of us. In the Coast Guard, there's only 41,000 in at any one time. That's it. That's not a ton of people. And when we get out, we're starting off at the ground level again. Unless we've got a degree, you're starting at dirt level because they don't look at a lot of the military experience that you have isn't really helping you in today's society.
Right.
You know, so
We had an episode where we talked a little bit about, you know, being forward thinking before you joined and thinking about that end of career transitioning, you know.
A lot of people don't think about that. They want to be hua and, you know, go do something, and they get out and they're like, okay, what can I do now?
yeah, security guard, right?
Yep.
You know.
Yeah. So that, you know, when I was enlisted, I was a combat engineer, and it has a great name, but all I did was detonate bombs and you know, play, you know, soldier with a little brains, and there is no transition. When I was going to school, I tried to get some of my, you know, the AGNOC and BNOC and all these different things to transfer over, and they're like, yeah, we can give you PE credit for these, you know, 6 years of service.
Right.
And you're like, oh, thanks, an hour. But so we're gonna start wrapping up. Do you have anything else you want to tell us? Because I do want to ask you a very pointed question.
I know you do. I'm sure you do. The other thing that I would just say is that there's a few ideas, and specifically for Manvel, there's at the local level, we don't really call it like bills or legislation. It's more so ordinances and resolutions, but we'll just use this terminology. There's legislation that I'm looking to introduce this year, and it's something that I hope to be a model for cities within Brazoria County. But it's, you know, we have a economic development corporation that collects a percentage of our sales tax and offers it to businesses that are starting to help them out, to help cover some of their costs. I want to see a portion of that carved out to help specifically veterans who are looking to open or operate businesses within our cities. I also want to see us start to offer a discount on our water billing utility fees for veterans. And, you know, there can be scale systems that are introduced. Of course, it's just the framework that's being established, whether it be 10%, 20%. It's something that helps them out. Maybe it's a little bit more for veterans that are actively serving compared to those that are veterans. You know, there's different ways to look at it. But the other one is cities, and a lot of people, when you move into a city, you don't realize how many fees there are, or what types of permits you have to get, and how there's all of these steps and these applications, and it's just, there's all this money that's attached to it. The personal opinion that I hold, and I think I'm biased because I have a father that was in the military and family that's in the military, I don't believe veterans should have to pay that. Whether you're active duty, reserves, National Guard, or you're a veteran, I don't believe that you should have to pay that. You've already paid your amount to society by enlisting, whether that's 4 years or that's 20 years. You said that if I'm called into battle, I am willing to sacrifice my life for my country and for the people that live in America. To me, to have to pay a $1,500 fee to appear before city council to get a special approval to operate your business in the city, that's baloney. You shouldn't have to do that. So those are things that I'm going to look to work on this year, and I hope to be able to work with some of my other fellow cities and elected officials to be able to do this within the county, because I believe that it is extremely, extremely important.
I was gonna, mention your other buddies to kind of go Alvin and specifically Pearland. I keep laughing because when Raymond, you've been here a year, right? A little bit over a year.
A little over a year.
We're starting to do all the paperwork.
Yep.
And permits.
And
I'm sorry.
Inspections and no, that's not good enough. There's a red tag.
What was the deal with the sinks? You had to move it over,
Like
like
to move sinks and do all kinds of good stuff.
sinks are already in place from somebody else.
Somebody else.
You can't, oh, because you're a food handling device, you can't have that kind of drain. You need that kind of drain.
Yeah.
And it's like, at the end of the day, does the drain work? Is it going to do what it needs to do? Yes.
Yep.
Why do I have to pay money to replace this if
Yeah.
it's going to do what it's supposed to do, which is
Yep.
drain what it needs to drain?
Yeah.
You need to move that fire extinguisher over 6 inches.
Oh, yeah, you did that, didn't you?
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Good times.
There are a lot of little things that, as a small business owner, you don't really think, I can tell you when I started the business, I didn't think anything through. I was just like, oh, how hard can it be to run a business? I spent 2019 learning how to run a business. I'm still learning how to run a business. But it's really good that cities are looking into doing things to help not only veteran type businesses, but businesses as a whole, especially, right now with the pandemic and how many businesses lost everything.
I'm just going to wait and see all the numbers at the end, because there's going to be a lot more, because this ain't going away anytime soon.
I read an article over the weekend, and they were talking about 50 restaurants that most likely will end up closing their doors for good. And, I was like, oh, they're going to be mom and pop restaurants, and they're not. It's like Sonic and Jack in the Box and Luby's and Fuddruckers. And, I mean, there's so many of these restaurants that you think, like Applebee's. I think of Applebee's, and I'm like, ooh, great drinks and cheap, right? They're losing money hand over fist, and it's crazy that something like a pandemic can, make things go by the wayside.
And like you said, like places like Fuddruckers like that, where people are like more gathering, and else, we're not going to be doing the gathering stuff anymore. Like, okay, games, and I can see like. What was that other one? Dave and Buster's. Like, people are not going to be going out anymore, so they're going to take a big hit. Everything's going to be.
As long as we get to keep our Chick-fil-A, we're good. As long as Chick-fil-A doesn't close.
Dude, God's chicken is not going anywhere.
I was still raining it down as manna from heaven.
Yeah,
Here's your sandwich.
we are a Chick-fil-A family. I can tell you that. We go to Chick-fil-A probably 3 times a week, which is not good on the pocketbook, but actually we had Chick-fil-A for lunch today.
Started off the week, right?
Well, we drive up and down from Tennessee every time we come to visit. We've been here the last 3 months. We're going to be here January, February, and March. But we've mapped out where the Chick-fil-A's are. We can go 3 hours here, and then we can stop for that Chick-fil-A and so on. So, yeah, we love it too.
So back in the day, I used to do a lot of driving for my job. I did business development, and we would block out like our drives or map them out by Cracker Barrels, because you could get audiobooks and return it at the next one. So I would,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah, you can rent them in one and drop them off somewhere else. So it was great, because I'd stop at one, have lunch, do the whole thing, get a book, go to the next one, grab another one, and so on. As a family now, we do it by Buc-ee's. Anytime we're going anywhere, we have to have a Buc-ee's on the drive.
They're good for restrooms. That's always bad.
No, because the beef jerky is really good. Like they have a lot of cool snacks.
That's just expensive. That's my problem.
Yeah, it does get expensive, especially when you got kids who are like, ooh, I need X, Y, Z. Oh, and by the way, I need this and that. Yeah, those are my kids. It's all good though. So as we start wrapping up, I want to first and foremost thank you very much, both of you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for coming out. I've been biting my tongue this entire time because I want to make Coast Guard jokes, but I'm really
That's okay. You can call us puddle pirates. We have to be 6 feet tall so we can walk to shore when our boat sinks. Yeah, I've heard them all.
I'm pretty sure. But I'm going to be nice for once.
Oh, they sent the Coast Guard over to Iraq when the war kicked off everything.
You know, and that's one of the things, though, right? Like, in recent years, the Coast Guard has really been a huge part of the service. That they've done a lot more than they used to.
So it's smart because they're utilizing you guys' day-to-day skills and stuff. Cause you guys are used to search and stuff. Like, okay, before an invasion, okay, who's sneaking in supplies, bringing in weapons and stuff. Like, okay, you had other countries sneaking in troops and other insurgents going in the country. So you guys had the experience, and you can train regular military personnel in the Navy and all that. Cause
Yeah, and our ships, a lot of our ships allow for aircraft to land on it. We would have the British helicopters come in and land on our the back of our ship, and it's pretty amazing. And even fuel them up and all that kind of stuff, so we could be those landing spots out in the ocean. We fall under the Department of the Navy in time of war. The president can immediately say, "Okay, Coast Guard," and we become transports for people and supplies.
That's cool. I didn't know that. Good to know. Definitely want to invite you guys to come back out. We can, we would love to talk a little bit more. But before we go, safety brief.
Yep.
You want to give that safety brief?
There's New Year's going out there and stuff. You gotta be safe out there. Heck, last night I had an accident myself. Somebody kept going straight in the turn-only lane. So, like I said, you gotta be safe out there. Make sure you take care of your surroundings and stuff. No drinking and driving. Make sure if you go, have a designated driver. Catch an Uber or Lyft or something like that. Always plan ahead. Don't go out there drinking. Just don't think about your life is not the only one that's on the line. Everybody else around you and stuff.
No shooting guns in the air.
As gravity, what goes up must come down.
I wanted to also talk about Harris County has the free sober ride program for New Year's Eve usually, and it usually goes from December 31st. It's like a 5 p.m. to 5 p.m. the next day, and it's for 21 and older. It's free of charge. They'll give you a one-way lift. And I think even the police will actually, don't quote me on that, but,
They'll usually give you a ride in the back of their car with the silver bracelets on.
well, that's what I was going to say. It's better to take a cab or pay for an Uber or whatever than ending up, in a drunk tank or ending up with a DWI
Lawyer fees and everything else. That's an expensive ride right there.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say something else you don't realize. When you get behind the wheel after having had a few drinks, anybody else can be walking in the street. And, and you see how dark it gets at night. Somebody walks the street and crosses the road, and you hit them. And you had just a little bit of alcohol in you. It's you, not their fault.
Yeah.
Do you really want to be responsible for a death?
That was going to be my thing. It's, God forbid that you end up killing somebody and then you live with that for the rest of your life. And, intoxicated manslaughter is a thing. And if you are intoxicated, most of the time that's what you're going to get is intoxicated manslaughter.
Yeah, just like you said, one beer, they can automatically tell you is being impaired. Doesn't mean you got to be like that percentage, just one or just even a couple, I said a half a beer. They can automatically say you're impaired because of that.
For those of you still serving, stay away from the bar because you never know. This is the holidays. You end up getting engaged, and next thing you know, BAQ is going to somebody else. Dependas.
BAH.
Oh, BAH, yeah. The last thing, remember that during the holidays, it can get a little bit more stressful. Remember that you are loved, you matter, and most importantly, this world would not be the same without you. If you're struggling, don't hesitate to reach out, whether it's to one of us or to a buddy. Most importantly, just reach out. Email us if you need to email us. Reach out via social media. I I always get stuck on this one because I care about you guys. We've all lost friends. We've all lost people that were close to us. I'm at a stage in my life where I'm so tired of hearing about veterans taking their own lives because they're not being able to get the help that they need. Guys, it is totally okay to ask for help. So, with that, I want to say we love you. Can't wait to see you next week. We'll tell you about Nick's awesome experiences over New Year's, all his New Year's resolutions.
Oh yeah.
And we'll talk about how many he's already broken by the time that we get back on Monday.
Oh, and all you people, man, don't be taking up my gym. I know you guys are gonna have those gym resolution stuff. Okay, workout. Weekend. Don't be sitting there on your phone and everything else. Use your workout machine and.
Hey, they'll go there first, second, and third, and then you'll be good.
Look, you have to have a selfie. Working out without a selfie does not count, Nick.
I'm talking about the ones that sitting there playing video games and everything else. Like, okay, you can do your little Tinder swipe and all that little stuff at home.
They're working out their fingers.
Yeah.
It's a workout. They're working out their fingers.
That's what I'm saying. So, with that,
All right, Charlie Mike. What you're saying?